Um, Once again, a quick disclaimer, we are going to be placing these recording on our YouTube channel. And if you're not comfortable with that, you can drop off now. And this call is being joined by our Microsoft team members as well as our customers and partners. Okay, so we're gonna start with our topic of discussion today. It is basically we have multiple topics today. I mean, we're going to talk about some of the things that some of the little things, and basically they came across as I was working with my customers. And if you're working with customers, I mean, I think it's a good idea to know that these things, these features, I mean, they're not large features, but they become really, really important in the big, grand scheme of things. So, and what we're going to talk about is ability to use a private endpoint enabled storage account with Azure Function for Linux. And this is basically as a metadata storage account. And we will talk about it. And second is how, if you are not using private endpoint, what are some of the things in Azure App Service which allows you to restrict traffic to your app service, and that will come in conjunction with some of the interesting scenarios such as front door. And if time permits, you will take a look at some of the enhancement, how you can troubleshoot network and connectivity issue with app service and function. Okay, so first of all, so while you're looking at this diagram, you know that whenever you create an Azure function, it creates a storage account by default. Okay, that storage account is used by Azure Function for multiple purposes. I mean, it is used for to use its metadata basically. It used to store some sort of logs. It used to store, keep track of deployments and things like that. So there's a number of a lot of information that is stored on this storage account. And if you see, for example, um, and we will look in the demo, I mean, you will have some things, I mean, some new queues, some system tables, some system blobs, and, system file. Before this latest update, which happened maybe a few weeks ago, uh, you were not able to make it private. So what happened was, like, it used to be has to be a public storage account. You have to have full access to that storage account, and you cannot kind of make it private. But with that update, first, um, it started with the Windows um, app service, and now with Linux app service as well, you can have um, what we call a private storage account to support the metadata store of Azure Functions. So let's take a look at that. I mean, I think the demo, and we will take a look, come back to the slide deck as well, uh, you know, uh, for reference again. So first of all, I'm going to go in here. This is my resource group. And as you can see, it has a Azure function. This is my Azure function app. And in this Azure function app, as you can see in this Azure function app, we have, if we go into configuration, we can see here this web job storage or any storage account. Let's take a look at that. This is the name of the storage account. This is the uh, Func store. So this is basically a system storage account. So let's go to that storage account. Okay. What we're going to do, we're going to open a new tab, go to the folks, if you're not asking any question, if you don't mind muting yourself. Okay, so let's go. If we go into this Func store, you will see this is the some of the containers that are there. It is storing some of the function related metadata. There will be a file share. So this is a file share. Once again, that is storing some of the information. I think they have the deployments and all. So that's here. And then if we keep going there is a queue which kind of checks for blob triggers and everything, since we have a blob trigger in this function. And then there is a table. There is no table there, but the point is uh, this storage is used to store function level metadata. And without in, uh, before this update, you have to have um, what we call like this public access. You cannot do any private access. But what we have done, we have created four private endpoints, one for each, one for blob, file, queue, table, and they are dropped in the same VNet where this function is being integrated. So you have a VNet integrated function, and then you have, and that is very important. You have to have the make the function VNet integrated if you want to use a private storage account, because there is no other way the function can access it. Okay, first you VNet integrated the function, then you created this four private endpoints in the for one for each service: blob, file, um, queue, and table. And then the next thing that you have to do is um, at the moment, once the private endpoint have dropped, you have to make one configuration setting change. And let's take a look at that. And I have put that in the presentation as well. So let's go back to our function. This is our function. If we go to configuration, give it a second, let it come back. And let's look at that setting. And this is the setting, content over VNet. Okay, this is important. Once you have done that, this will basically direct the function to load all of its metadata over the VNet integrated connectivity. Oh, by the way, and don't forget about this VNet route all and DNS server. So let me just show you these settings. So these are the settings that are important um, in this for this particular use case. One is the DNS server. So you have to send it to this DNS server, and then you have the VNet route all set to 1. If you are familiar with using private endpoints with Azure Functions or App Service VNet integrated, you are familiar with these settings. And of course, you have to set up private DNS zones as well for all of these four endpoints. Okay. So as I said, create the private endpoints, create private DNS zone, set these settings, three settings: VNet route all, DNS server, and content over VNet to 1. Once you have set those, then you can go into your storage account and set, look, I'm doing selected networks, no service endpoints, and that's it. Oh, by the way, this IP address, this is the IP, I mean, this is my outbound IP address that I'm using to connect to the web app. So once you are done with that, what will happen is that you now you're connecting to this metadata store without going over the internet. Okay, what is the whole point about what is the kind of the end game? End game is you can put a NSG on your app service VNet, basically restricting all outbound traffic if you need to do that. Okay, because a number of organization enterprises, they don't want unbound egress to the internet. So what they want to do is either block it altogether or redirect that traffic to a firewall. So you can do both of these things. Once you are able to restrict that to a private storage account, at the moment, you can either stop all outbound traffic, or let's say that your app service is calling something over the internet, you can use a firewall then and basically specifically kind of unblock that outbound IP address or outbound FQDN. Okay, so that it allows you to do making the whole environment more secure, less prone to data exfiltration and things like that. Okay, so any questions? Okay, uh, so with that, as I said, it was there for Windows a few months ago, and it is now available for Linux. So try it out. I mean, if you have or your customer are using app services with VNet integration, this is a good feature to have where kind of you can completely isolate your storage account. Okay, so now while we are here, let's look at um, the networking side of functions. So um, what I'm going to do is for that, and by the way, since functions and app service, they're kind of running on the same platform, um, they have very similar kind of a management uh, interface. So same thing that you see in functions, like this network preview, access restriction, same thing is available for app service as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over now on the app service and take that, kind of a discussion topic and talk about some of the things that app service access restrictions is allowing you to do. Okay. So first of all, look at that. This is the, just remember, app service have two sides. One is a front end. That's how you access an app service. That can be an app service that is available over HTTP, so you can access it. And if you want to access it over private endpoint, you can create private endpoints for the app service. Okay. Second thing is how app service calls out. I mean, that's the outbound from app service calling to something else. And that's where you VNet integration comes into picture. That's where you need to set up appropriate DNS zones and things like that. If you're accessing anything, you may drop their private endpoint. Any Azure service, you can drop their private endpoint into the VNet and access it that way. Or if there is anything that you're accessing over the internet, you can use NSG or firewall depending on how you're accessing. So that, just want to clarify. So private endpoint, I think we have talked about it in the past. That's not the topic of discussion today. We want to talk about access restriction, and there are some of the things that are kind of new, or you can call it, that are just gone to GA, and they don't get that much attention, but I think they're very important. So first of all, if you do not have any access restriction, actually, let me go to another app. Let me show you one without access restriction. Give me 1 second. Okie dokie. This is the web. This is another app. I'm gonna go into networking preview. Access restriction doesn't have any. Allow all. Okay. As soon as you add an access restriction, it blocks everything except what is allowed. So just keep that in mind. So whenever you add an access restriction, it's gonna block everything and allow only that thing to come in. Okay, so just keep in mind. So let's look at what are the rules we can add. I mean, you can add the name of the rule that's kind of given, allow, deny, priority. If there are multiple rules, just keep in mind they will be executed in the lowest first. Okay, so it will start looking from the lowest rule. Wherever it finds a match, I mean, it will stop right there. Okay, source setting. What is the source IP? That's very simple. You want to lock it to a certain IP address, or if you want to block a certain IP address, you can enter a cedar range and just go from there. That's very simple. But and then you have IPv6, you have virtual network if you want to tie it to a virtual network. I mean, that's kind of similar to service endpoints. And then you have service tags. So this comes in handy, especially when you have app service and function which are triggered based on, especially functions which are triggered based on Azure Monitor. So let's say Azure Monitor is triggering an Azure function as a part of its action group or something happened. Then what you can do is you can go in here and add the appropriate, service tag here. So there is going to be a monitor service tag somewhere, and you can use that, Azure Monitor service. Yeah, you see there, Azure Monitor service tag. So you can, add that here to make sure that only Azure Monitor or IP addresses, because service tag is nothing. It's just basically a set of IP addresses, and you don't have to worry about those IP addresses changing and things like that. So basically, it will lock it to that. Okay. And especially in the case of app service, that will come in handy as well when you are using something like front door. So what you can do is you can lock traffic to just coming from front door by saying, hey, I am going to say that, sorry, this one, I just want traffic from Azure front door backend. That's it. Okay. So these IP addresses, that's the only place I want traffic to get to. That's it. So that's just one level of interaction. Let's say that you have multiple front doors and you have multiple websites. Okay. And these front doors are calling those websites. And you have locked it to front door backend. But still, a front door, let's say you have two front door sites, FD1 and FD2, and you have four app services, app 1, app 2, app 3, app 4. App 1, app 2 are being used by FD1. App 3, app 4 are used by FD2. How it will work if, let's say, I mean, somebody goes in by mistake and add app 3 to the pool of the wrong front door. It will still be able to call it because you have the service tag set up just to the front door backend. So that's where these HTTP header filter comes in handy. What you can do here is this is the front door ID. Sorry, this is the front door ID, as you can see. So you can go to your front door implementation. For example, here, copy the front door ID and just paste it here. Okay. Once you paste it, now it is locked to that front door. No other front door instance can call it except this particular one. Okay. So this is kind of that's how you can take advantage of these restrictions. So I have a small kind of a demo in that scenario. Um, uh, so let me go in here. So I have a front door that I set up. Let's go to that front door. Here it is. And if we go into the front door designer, this is the front door domain. And this is the front door backend pool. As you can see, there are two websites, um, you know, and let's try to call one of those websites. Let's see what happens directly. Okay. So I'm going to add a new tab and I'm going to try to call this website. It's 403 Forbidden. So let's see what we have done to make it possible. If I go to this particular website, And if I go into networking, access restrictions, look at that. This rule is automatically added when you rule allow rule, and this is the restriction that I have added. I added priority 100, and I said just lock it to the front door backend. Okay, and the next thing I can do is just like I showed you here. I can go into the front door. Uh, Here, copy its front door ID, and I can just paste it here and update the rule. So now it is locked to this front door. No other front door can call it. So you see, that's another level. Um, Same thing you have to do to the all the sites that are in the backend pool of your front door. Once that is done, front door will be able to call it. And so basically, as you can see here, uh, both of these websites, I will not be able to call those websites directly. The only way I can call it, uh, if I go in here, this is my front door page, refresh it. This is, as you can see here, I'm able to call it. It's taking me to East US2. I have a simple VM in West US2. If I call it here, it's taking me to West US2. So the point is, at the moment, you are um, allowing only traffic from the front door going all the way to your web apps, and they cannot be called from anywhere else. Okay, any questions, folks? Okay, so let's move further. Let's talk about Uh, let's go back to our slide deck. So, okay, so just a recap. I mean, we talked about the private storage, and this is all the settings. I mean, you have to update to V1 to V2, and then, sorry, I just need to update some text here, I think. And this is basically the service stack based rules. And that's what happened when you do slide deck at the last minute. And these are the multi-source rules. Oh, by the way, there are multi-source rules as well, which allow you to have multiple IP address ranges. Okay, so let me show you here. So in this one, if we go into this web app, second, let me go in here. If we go into this web app one more time, I just want to show you something here. Networking preview, access restrictions, add a rule. Right now, there is only one range I can add from the UI. Okay? I can only add one range, but you can add multiple ranges. And as you can see in the slide deck, that number is 8. So you can have so basically, you know, that's where you can have, basically 8 ranges per rule, but you cannot do it from the UI. You have to do it from PowerShell. That is the only way you can make changes to it. Okay, so that just keep that in mind. That's why you don't see that in here. We already saw HTTP header filters. I mean, that are definitely supported from the UI. Of course, you can do it from PowerShell as well. So that thing is there. Okay. One other thing that has kind of uh, definitely worth a shot, and I found, you know, increasing success in diagnosing and solving problem or redirecting customers to solve problems is the diagnostics preview. I mean, they have made some enhancements. For example, it can tell you if there is anything wrong with your application. I mean, you can basically look for TCP connections for Linux. And what it will do is it will analyze your data and at least kind of give you some pointers, what to do next. So it may not be able to solve the problem right there and then, but it can give you some pointers. Okay, what is happening with your application and what you can or what you can or cannot do. For example, a very good scenario here. Um, we all use keyword references, and a number of times having keyword references, sometime the managed identity is not there. Sometime the we don't have appropriate kind of you know we may not have unblocked the IP address, or we may not have assigned appropriate managed identity to access that particular um, keyword references. And by the way, if you're not familiar with keyword references, they are keyword shortcuts. So basically, you can put the URL of a keyword secret in your app settings and it will access it. So what you can do is you can this will analyze, this will tell you if there are anything wrong with your keyword reference. So, I mean, if there's not, I mean, so it has checked, okay, identity is enabled, keyword reference has valid identity and all, and keyword accessible by site managed identity. So all of these things are there. And if you click on those, you can see more detail around it, additional information you can read about it. So let's say if that is not working, you can go through this diagnostic. It can give you all the information, and then you can basically, or sometime what happens is you may have missed something, but it will give you that information to move on. So that's the diagnostic piece that I think that is being improved a lot, and I will highly recommend. And we came across some scenarios with customer where, kind of we directed them to look at this, and they were able to kind of automatically figure out what was going on just by looking at some of the information. They realized, oh, we missed something. So that's what I want to kind of bring everybody's attention to. So any questions? We have 2 more minutes. Okay. So with that, if there are no questions, I will give everybody 1 minute back and hope to see everyone. And next week, Allah is going to be uh, talking about, my counterpart is going to be talking about Lewis. So it's going to be a good session, I'm sure. So hope to see everybody next week, and stay safe, and have a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveed.
Thank you.